Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Middleton Zoning Board of Appeals open meeting for the month of January 2019. First item of business on the agenda tonight will be the minutes of the meeting of December 27th, 2018. Do all the board members have copies, and have they read them? Are there any questions? If not, to accept the motion to accept. I have a motion.
Motion, I'll move to accept.
Motion is made. Is there a second? Second. Second. All those in favor, vote. Aye. Motion's unanimous. Next item, I'm gonna skip to number 4, is 221 South Main Street, application number 1066 from 7 River Street LLC. And I have a letter here that is submitted to the board withdrawing that application. We will dismiss that case and move on the next.
Well, yeah, I think you have to vote. And
To-
I also wanted to ask the applicant if he wanted to ask for it to be withdrawn without prejudice.
Yes.
And we do have a letter from him
Yeah.
also.
I have the letter here. yeah.
Oh, okay,
That's what I'm referring to.
all right.
Okay.
Would you like me to read it into the
Yep.
record? Middleton Board of Appeals, please accept this as confirmed notice that the 7 River Street LLC, owner of 221 South Main Street, Middleton, Mass., will be withdrawing their application to the Middleton Board of Appeals for increased signage on the pylon sign located at 221 South Main Street. The application was submitted due to safety concerns in regard to being able to read the individual sign panels for each business during heavy traffic periods on Route 114. After viewing the videotape of the December meeting, it appears that the board feels strongly that all signs should remain the maximum 15 feet high, whether it be a single store or a retail center with multiple businesses. The board's time on this matter is muchly appreciated. Respectfully submitted, Warren Kelly, manager, 7 River Street LLC, Middleton.
Any of the board members have any questions? Is there a motion to dismiss?
Make a motion to dismiss without prejudice.
Motion to dismiss without prejudice. There is second.
I'll second.
Second. All those in favor, vote.
Yes.
Aye.
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 Yes. Unanimous. We will now dispense from the normal business for a short period, and I'm going to welcome our town administrator, who's going to address the board. Andy, if you would, please. Yep, that's fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nice to see everybody tonight. Just wanted to provide a little, really just kind of a courtesy call tonight for the board to bring you into the loop on the upcoming special town meeting that will take place on March 19th. The purpose of the special town meeting is the acquisition of the Middleton Golf Course. The town has been searching for a number of years for a location for public facilities complexes, or complex, starting with a fire station, which is the first priority of the various projects. Struggled for, as I said, to find a piece of land. We had initially identified a parcel of land behind Angelica's and had a handshake agreement to purchase that piece of property. We were then approached by the owners of Middleton Golf, and frankly, the offer was too good to pass up. Roughly twice the acreage, roughly twice the dry acreage, 74 feet of frontage on the first parcel versus about 1,000 feet of frontage on South Main Street for the golf course. So the Board of Selectmen frankly jumped at the opportunity to pursue the acquisition of the golf course. As I said, the parcel is about twice the size as the piece behind Angelica's, and the acquisition price is the same for both projects, both properties, at $3.8 million. So we're going to have a special town meeting on March 19th. The purpose of the town meeting is for the acquisition. So the $3.8 million for the acquisition of the property and then an additional sum to do a master development plan of the property to make sure that we're laying out the various pieces of the project in the most efficient way that we can. We've got a lot of land to work with, but we don't want to be wasteful of that land. There's no need to be wasteful, and it's more costly to the taxpayers if we are wasteful, because it just means that we're building more parking and drive and infrastructure than we need. So the cost of the master development plan is expected to be about $325,000. So at this point, it is a 2-article town meeting. Town meeting will take place at the usual location at the Howe Manning School, and start at the usual time of 7 p.m. So I mentioned that the fire station would be the first, or the acquisition of the property would be the first piece of a larger project. We're looking at fire, and this is over a period of, we'll be generous and say 10 to 20 years, but it could easily extend longer than that. But essentially a 4-piece project: fire, police, town offices, and community center / council on aging. My expectation, or the indication from the board, is that it would be fire first, and then community center / council on aging, the others to come at a later time. If everything goes as well as it can go, we would be breaking ground probably in late 2020 and opening the station in early 2022. So it's about it's a 2-season build on a station, on a building like that. But just in terms of perspective for the facilities that we're working out of now, with particular emphasis on the fire station, we've been in that building since 1957. When it initially opened, we were I think we were a volunteer department, and the fire department was upstairs. The DPW was downstairs in the section that leads out to the back towards the library. The nature of fire service has changed in 57 years. The nature of Middleton has dramatically changed in that time period, to the point where we are moving more and more towards a full-time force. We've got a large contingent now of full-time firefighters, and fire service in general, especially in suburban areas like Middleton, it's harder and harder to find call firefighters or part-time firefighters. So without choice, we will move more and more towards a professional full-time fire department. Memorial Hall, where the seat of local government is located, was built in 1860 as a school. We've got a pretty good 160 years out of that. The police station was built in 1952. It was the station for the town of Danvers. Danvers outgrew it in the early 80s and sold it to us for $1 in 1982, and we rolled it down Route 114, and we've been in that building since that time. Up until that time, police was out of the back of Memorial Hall. And the Council on Aging was built in 1848. So we've really stretched these buildings to the limit, and we're outgrowing them, and to the point where we're throwing good money after bad to stay in those buildings. So obviously, one of the first questions that somebody would ask is, how do we, again, how much is it? And the acquisition cost is $3.8 million, and then the follow-up is, how do we pay for it? And we've been working to put funds away to help us to do that. We don't have $3.8 million squirreled away, but we do have a plan for financing the acquisition. We'll be doing a short-term loan followed by a permanent loan that will probably run for 30 years. And the debt service on that is about $250,000 per year on average. High points in the first 10 years and trails off after that. We will initially do the acquisition without the benefit of a debt exclusion under Proposition 2.5, but we would roll the acquisition cost into the first building project, which again is the fire department. And so that would be probably in, I would expect it would be in 2020 or maybe in 2021. So it is, it's a lot going on. It's an exciting time for Middleton, and promises to be an exciting and busy 10 or 20 years as this project goes forward and as we build this out. A number of people have asked me, what happens if town meeting says no? And that's a good question. And there's not a clear path forward without the acquisition of land, whether it's this land or the land behind Angelica's or some other mystery parcel that we haven't identified yet. More than likely, the fire station would drop off the list. It would certainly drop off the top of the list. And then we would probably be looking at some other alternative for Memorial Hall that would free that site up for eventual construction of a fire station there. But our focus for the next 2 months is on building support for this project, for the land acquisition, and hoping that we can convince people that it's the right thing for the future of Middleton.
Sir, is it the entire golf course?
It is.
And how much of the land would the town want on the main street?
That'll be firmed up during the master development planning process. My guess is that it is probably around 15 acres, give or take.
That would be for the fire.
For the fire, police, community center, and town hall. The balance of the property, at the wishes of the Brown family, the family that owns the property, the balance of the property would remain as open space in perpetuity.
So the golf course is gone?
The golf course is gone. And we had these conversations early on of, could we run it in the near term while we're getting the design done and all of that? Or could we run it as a 9-hole or reconfigure it as an 18-hole down the road so that it is bringing in some revenue and we maintain the course? We don't think either is feasible. It's a short course, it's a par 3 course, and I'll be the first to admit that I'm not a golfer and I don't profess to know a heck of a lot about golf courses. This is the second municipal course that I've bought in my career, or that I shouldn't say that I've bought, that I've been part of an acquisition of. It is a short course. It doesn't lend itself to reconfiguration into a 9-hole. 9-hole par 3s, to my knowledge, don't really exist. If it was a regulation 18, you could certainly look at knocking it down to a 9. We also don't think that it's a fairly small course at 52 acres. We don't think that it is feasible to reconfigure the course after we're done or around what we're doing, in order to maintain an 18-hole.
Is there any of the area for the town residents, like swimming pool, or, just something that they will get out of it?
Well, I think the residents will get a lot out of it. They'll get a new public safety center, whether that's in separate buildings or a combined building. That decision hasn't been made. There will be a community center and senior center at some point down the road. In terms of pool or courts or something like that, that's not being considered.
The senior center now is by the Congregational Church?
That's correct, yep.
Are they have a need to move? I mean,
They do, yeah, there's, the building is, it's 170 years old. It is barely handicap accessible, arguably, some would argue it's not, but I think it does meet the criteria with not a lot of wiggle room. Parking is very limited there and poorly laid out, not through the fault of anybody, it's just a tough site, there's not a lot of land to work with there. So it's a difficult place to get in and out of in a vehicle, it's a difficult building to get in, around, and out of once you're inside, so. And they're limited to that 3,500 square feet or whatever the size of that building is. It puts practical limits on the offerings that they can provide there.
I just didn't know if the need for the senior center represents taking valuable space in the center of town is worth it.
Yeah, it really does. And our senior population is growing, which is the case in most communities in this area. So we need to address that in the long term, if not the short term.
Thank you.
I have a question. What is there a plan at this point for the property that the fire station is currently on? Like, is that, I've heard people say, well, what are they gonna do with that? Is there?
Yeah, and there's a lot of interest in what's going to happen with the parcels as we move out of them. The fire station is probably the easiest one to say what the future of that property is. It's a quarter-acre lot, I think it's 12,000 square feet, maybe 13,000 square feet. So it is, it's pretty tiny. It is not, it's not feasible to build on it. Some people have said, well, let's put the senior center in there, and it'll be right next to the library, and they can all work together. That's not feasible because of the size of the lot. My expectation is that will become a municipal parking lot in the long term, which, it's a shame and it's a benefit. The library doesn't have enough parking. There's frequently shortage of parking at the library, and so that would be my expectation going forward. The other properties, the police department property, and again, police department is probably third on the list, so we're a long way from that one. But that is sort of commercial area, so there's some opportunity there to potentially recoup some investment. The others, kind of your guess is as good as mine.
Okay.
When you have a little bit more information, what you guys are planning, will you show it to various boards before you go to the town meeting?
Yeah, so there's, we'd love to be able to come in front of you tonight and say, we want to buy this land because this is what we want to build.
Yeah.
And this is where the fire station is going to be, and this is where the community center is going to be, and all of that. We're not able to do that now because we don't have the funds to be able to do that. And we don't have the flexibility of asking the owners of the golf course to wait a year while we design that. So a lot of this is going to be sort of taken on faith. I think there's a general acknowledgement that we need to address these public facilities. And I think it's up to us to make the case that the existing land that we own or that we're on is inadequate to do that, and that we need this parcel to do that. So, but down the road, a year from now, when we come back to town meeting, looking for funds to do the design of the fire station, we will have a plan that will say, this is where the fire station is proposed to be. This is where we project the senior center, community center to be. This is where we project the
Well, I
other
think
pieces.
it's an excellent price, excellent buy before it's completely developed. But there's other questions, like what happens to the old fire station, which is a valuable piece of land.
Right,
And I wouldn't want that gobbled up to some foolish waste.
right, and to Carolyn's question, my guess is that would be utilized for parking for downtown.
Well, parking is nice, but it won't bring in much revenue for the town.
It won't, but, you know, it's a quarter-acre lot, so it's hard to recoup much from a parcel of that size, so. But there's a lot for us to work through over the coming years.
Is there any houses on 114 that you fellows would take over as eminent domain or something?
No.
Because there's some rundown houses that would fit in nicely to your future plans, probably.
Yeah, we don't have any, we're not looking at any other parcels besides the golf course. Any other questions? All right, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to come in.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Okay, we'll go back on the record, and the ZBA record. The next item on the agenda is application number 1068, 221 Main Street, site plan modification. Read the paperwork, please.
Start with the legal ad and the abutters. Or the comments, I can't remember.
But the legal ad should be right on top, that's all you have to read.
Which one?
The legal ad?
Oh,
the
okay.
Posting, yep.
Okay. In accordance with the provisions of Chapter 48, Section 11 MGL, the Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a public hearing on Thursday, January 24th, 2019, at 7 p.m. at the Fuller Meadow School Media Center, 143 South Main Street, on the application of 7 River Street LLC for a modification of site plan approval under Section 9.5 of the Middleton zoning bylaw, or any additional relief the board may find necessary to modify the previous site plan approval on property located at 221 South Main Street and found on Assessor's Map 33, Parcel 32. Plans are on file at the Office of the Town Clerk, Memorial Hall, 48 South Main Street, Middleton, Mass., and at the Planning Board Office, DPW 195 North Main Street, Middleton. Any person interested or wishing to be heard on this application should appear at the time and place designated. And we have a list of the abutters, 300-foot abutters here. And we have comments. So this is from the ICDRC. The Industrial Commercial Design Review Committee met with applicant Warren Kelly to discuss his amended site plan for his developed property at 221 South Main Street in Middleton. 2 representatives from the Richardson family and a butter also attended. Mr. Kelly requested approval of a site plan change to his front parking lot, adding paved spaces with curbing to the north end and adding grass. During the course of the meeting, the board was made aware that the site plan changes have already been made. The meeting then evolved into a discussion that included the abutter expressing their concern that the expanded parking violated the easement that the additional parking spaces were built on. The ICDRC scope is to review overall site layout and architectural appearance, including landscape, lighting, signage, etc., mainly dealing with the aesthetics of a project. The board had no information on the easement agreement and felt it was not within our scope to validate the legal aspects of the easement agreement. The board did state, however, that if the site plan change was presented before the work was performed, we would have questioned the constraints of the easement shown on the plan. The committee approved the aesthetic appearance and functional layout of the parking/grass in the revised site plan, but defers to the Board of Appeals whether to address the abutter's complaint that their easement agreement has been violated and take any action on the applicant requesting approval after work has been completed. Sincerely, Michael Watkin, Board Member, ICDRC. From the Board of Appeals, January 10th. Anthony Tierno, the chairman, at a regularly...
That's not the Board of Appeals.
Planning board.
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Planning Board. sorry, just reading. At a regularly scheduled meeting held on Wednesday, January 9th, 2019, the Middleton Planning Board reviewed the application from Warren Kelly for the property located at 221 South Main Street for a modification of site plan approval to allow the addition of parking spaces in an area subject to a reciprocal easement between the owner and abutting landowners and located along the northwest edge of the property. The board voted 4 in favor and 1 opposed, or, well, 4 in favor, Mr. DiGregorio, Mr. McGlone, Mr. York, and Mr. Banucli, and 1 opposed, Mr. Tierno, to recommend that the additional parking spaces be allowed to remain until the easement is actively used, at which time the owner will remove the parking spaces at his own expense. Additionally, the owner should be required to file a confirmatory deed of the previously granted easement to all parties to the easement at the Registry of Deeds from the owner of 221 South Main Street. Kristen Kent, conservation agent, said no conservation comments. And that's it for comments from Tim.
Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this project?
Yes, Warren Kelly, the owner,
Would you speak into the microphone for us, please?
on top of everybody here. Warren Kelly, I'm the owner of the property. First of all, I'd like to apologize if at the last meeting I seemed agitated. This is a tough thing on me, so I do want to apologize for the board if I did appear. So I hope you can accept that. I wanted to write down my presentation so I wouldn't get off track, so if you could bear with me while I read it, and then you can ask any questions you have.
You can do that.
Hey, I'm here tonight before the Board of Appeals for the approval of the submitted site plan modification for the 221 South Main Street Retail Center. In an attempt to beautify the site, I modified the approved site plan where the 5 questioned parking spaces are by replacing the approved gravel in the front left side of the lot with asphalt, curbing, as well as a grass strip. The approved site is these 3 here, and this was to be all gravel. That's what was approved. What I did was I moved these parking spaces down where the gravel was. I put these, I did not stripe them, I left it for temporary parking, and I think it looks a lot better than gravel. So that's the area in question here. That's what I did. So I replaced it with the asphalt, the curbing, and the grass strip. In my opinion, this was a minor modification to enhance the site, which I now clearly understand that this board feels differently, and for which I sincerely apologize for my interpretation of the ruling versus yours. In doing the site modification, I was extremely careful to assure that there were no permanent structures blocking any future travel within a travel easement if in fact permits would be granted to any abutters who held the rights for the travelway. Therefore, I honestly don't understand the issue at hand on a personal level. The site plan in front of you exceeds all parking, exceeds all open space requirements. It represents a safe and attractive site I feel both the town and the business community can and is proud of. While I personally considered the modification to be in the best interest of the businesses located within the center, I'm faced with this unfortunate situation due to the complaint filed by the Richardson family, or Richardson Green. Also note that it has been said, I want to clear up, that I was contacted before, I believe I did the paving and everything. I just want to state publicly that I was at an airport when I got a phone call. The paving and all the work had already been done, and I believe Mr. Richardson would agree that I was completely surprised and shocked that there was an issue at all. And I told him upon flying back, I would look right into it. So, on a side note. The fact that the work was done And I was made, the fact that the work was done, and I was made aware of any issue, again, surprised me. I knew there was no issue. I asked this board to consider that the other land abutter, I have two land abutters who also worked with me to enhance the area on Rutland Way, and who has the exact same rights to a possible future travel easement, has publicly supported this site plan and is very happy with the current development. That being said, realistically, it could be anywhere from 12 months to years before a plan by Mr. Richardson is approved, if in fact the plan is approved at all. In addition, due to the current land elevations on this travelway, the land on the easement could not be used as a passable easement at this time because it has to have, in addition to obtaining state and town permitting, has to deal with a 3-foot drop in elevation. So you have the current road, Rutland Way, then you have this easement, which is a 3-foot higher elevation. The plan I'm showing, or I'm asking for, clearly shows that the 5 unstriped parking spaces in question, it is in writing that they would be removed if the permits were granted for a roadway. I have made it clear several times that if permits were granted to Mr. Richardson, I would certainly remove the parking. This is a fact that has been put in writing several times. In my opinion, that should satisfy the board as well as Mr. Richardson, and I can only hope so. For the board to deny use on my land, the land that I paid for, the land I maintain and pay taxes on, plus hinder local businesses as well as their clientele, because Mr. Richardson may someday get permits, would simply be unjust to myself as well as the small businesses located in the retail center. Please understand that it was through my cooperation in granting an easement that my abutters we all solved an access issue to the rear lots, which benefited both the Richardsons as well as the airtight land, and benefited this town. And I think you're all aware of the issue with the access. It also increased the abutters' property value, and it paved way for future development, which will also benefit the town. Without this agreement, I don't know if development could have been done to the rear lots. So again, I ask, why are we here? I cannot stress enough that while Mr. Richardson may want to control my land, this is simply not Richardson's land. This is no more, in my mind, than a land-taking attempt which should be decided in the land courts and not by our respected boards. Once again, I will state that if and when Mr. Richardson is granted permits to use the easement, I will remove the paved area. If this board also requires that the granite curb be removed immediately, which has been expressed as an issue, again, not a permanent structure, but I am also willing to agree to that. I don't know what purpose, but I'm willing to agree to that. Again, there was no intention. It's strictly asphalt on an easement which no one has permits to use. The planning board, the design and review board, which we just heard from, they did vote unanimously that they liked the site plan presented, yet, as stated, due to lack of knowledge in regard to these issues, they had made no recommendation. But without this issue at hand, my interpretation was a unanimous vote, and I believe that's what the letter said, that they approved the site plan as it was. The planning board, whose members are elected by the town residents and who have placed their confidence in the decisions the planning board makes to benefit our community, gave a 4-to-1 positive recommendation to approve the plan before you, with the condition that the deed states the parking will be removed if and when Mr. Richardson obtains approved plans as well as state permits. Once again, I have stated several times, I am willing to do this. This is in writing, and we'll put on the deed. I also ask you to understand that any potential land taking of my property for a roadway would result in the Richardsons having to obtain permits for a 40 to 60-foot entrance on Route 114, which would be very close to the two other entrances. And where I'm talking here, this is currently the Richardson's 30-foot roadway, which we all know. If they were to come and take this easement, they have to maintain this 30-foot. So if you can maintain that 30 and you come up here, you're talking about a 40-foot road, which is, I'll go from there. So they would have to, let me go back here, 40 to 60-foot entrance. And it's close to two other entrances. This roadway would have to be approved by all of the boards in town, as well as the Mass Highway Division. I feel confident in saying, after discussing this situation with many town residents in town, that our community, as well as the state, and I think the town boards, would find it very difficult to approve this type of plan at this area of Route 114 for both traffic and safety reasons. Once again, there is a substantial 30-foot entrance. Then there's the entrance right next to it, going north. Then there's my two entrances. There's nothing wrong with our entrance. Maybe it could be widened at the entrance, but to put a 30 or 40 foot, which they would have to do to maintain their easement, okay, that would be crazy. The traffic would be insane, and they would have to get through the entire town. And talking to people and knowing the state, I've dealt with the state on many developments, I don't believe they would offer on Route 114 another major wide entrance. But that's my speculation. So again, I asked why the board would order me to create a less attractive site, hurt the local businesses, and tear up all of this pavement to replace it with gravel, because the Richardsons may possibly get future approvals for a road. What purpose would this serve? A vote to tear out all of this to me, after done, in my opinion, would be an unjust land taking and serve no benefit to anyone, and would only support the Richardsons' attempt to take my land. And I really have to be clear on this, because I think at the last meeting I got the opinion some board members felt this might not be my land. This is my land, and I did pay taxes, and this is just a farmer's easement or whatever. So with the conditions that I've agreed to, that the planning board also recommended, I respectfully ask this board to take the same position and vote to allow this site modification with the condition, which is in writing, and I will put on the deed, that I will in fact, if the Richardsons are successful in convincing the state of Massachusetts and the town of Middleton to widen that road, I will take the asphalt out. Then, and if Mr. Richardson gets the permit, we can work together in harmony and cooperation to develop a prime area within the community rather than work and develop as adversaries. So again, we're talking this little strip, and if any of you have done a site visit, you would notice that I never striped it, and I deliberately didn't stripe it because I have to wait to see, but the businesses within, they're all doing very well. Parking's a problem anywhere, Linfield Marketplace, the North Shore Mall. So giving them the benefit of this, even if it's for a year, 2 years, whatever, it's a great benefit. And why take it away? For what reason? And this is where I'm having a hard time. If we do take it away, take this away from those businesses, which will hurt them, and we're going to now put ugly gravel, lose those spaces, and these businesses will get hurt. And let's just say I'm right, and let's say it takes 6 years to get approval. Let's say I'm right, and the state says there's no way we're gonna put a 40 or 50-foot entrance here. Let's just say I'm right. All that is, that's why I call it a land taking. This is just gonna sit there, and I pay taxes on it, I maintain it, you all know my properties, I keep them up. I didn't do this to hurt the Richardsons. I am in full cooperation with the Richardsons. When this happened, I've stated I will absolutely pull that up, and again, using machines, whether they pull up gravel or if there's a layer of asphalt, if this was to be done, the Richardsons would have to go in and build a road, have to deal with the elevations, do drainage, all the different things that are involved in developing. But whether the machine pulls up gravel or pulls up 1.5 inches of hot top, it makes no difference. But my feeling is the absurdity of taking my land just to say you control it and having it sit there, and it does no good at all. There are no permanent obstacles. This cannot be used, and it's a unique situation in the sense that a typical easement, they would have no access. There is a 30-foot road here to the Richardson land. I don't know what the issue is. 30-foot wide road. Second of all, this abutter here, who's actually using the land, he has a going business and he runs his vehicles every day, has come over to tell me what a great job I did, has publicly stated that this is crazy. He's fine with it. If it ever gets approved, Warren, you'll take it out. It's in writing, plus my word is good, no problem. And he's using it every day. The Richardsons haven't even developed this. There's no point in this, and I'm not asking for anything. I understand there is an easement, and I'm asking this board to understand that what I'm requesting on the proposed site plan, which is in writing, simply asking that you allow this to stay until such time all permits are granted for the Richardsons to take over my land. And the one that I'm asking you to permit has the parking, and it says, it's in writing and it's recorded, would be recorded. These spaces shall be removed if easement grantee receives approval to construct access in this location. Can't be clearer. It's in writing, on the deed. I don't know what else, and I would hope that you would listen, you would feel, I shouldn't say listen to, that's a bad word, but feel the same way the planning board, who also represents our community, felt, saying, there's no sense in ripping out. You got a beautiful shopping center. Everybody loves it. Why go in with a machine, tear it up, and put gravel, and just leave ugly gravel strip? Because someday, and again, I don't know when, it may be permitted. And if it does get permitted, I'll work with them. We'll do it, and we'll do a great job. So that concludes it, and I ask for your approval.
I look at this
Yep.
map that we have in the kit, it doesn't look anything like your map.
The map you have.
Yeah, I mean, I would like one like that in the kit. Up here it's different, and down here it was different.
No, it's a, same. I just colored it in. That one in front of you,
But where's the,
right here.
up
Oh,
above?
if I go like this,
No.
there's the parking.
Yeah, there's the parking, but it ends right, it doesn't have that little jet out. of
Oh, it does, I just colored it green. See this here? That's the jet out right there. It's the same plan.
Oh, these are green then?
Yeah, I just colored it green because.
Oh, okay, I thought there was a divider. Okay.
No, okay, so it's it's the exact same plan.
Down here.
And and that's where it says that they will be removed, and those are the 5 things here. And also to clarify, we have confirmed I did move, there was a question about the white septic pipe at the last meeting. I want you all to know that I took care of that. Once again, I don't know why it's a big issue, but it took my contractor 20 minutes. All he did was the pipe was here. He put it here. He moved it, okay? The septic system has been questioned, is the septic on the easement? The septic is not on the easement, we have as-built. I did nothing to violate anything, there was no intention. To me, this is I like the Richardsons, to me, this is really an unfortunate situation. We all work, they've done a lot for the town, I feel I've done a lot to help the town here enhance. This is very unfortunate, but I'm asking the board to all I'm asking for, let us leave it alone, and then when and if permits are done, we take it off, and we can't do any more than put it on the deed, put it on the plan. I put it in blood, basically. I don't know what else we can do. All right? Any other questions?
I have a few questions I'd like
Yes.
to ask. When you started out, you mentioned that you considered this a minor modification. And I'm sure you're aware, being in the business as long as you have, that the building commissioner has the right to approve minor modifications. And you wouldn't have been here if you really felt this was a minor modification.
Oh.
So I think that, this is a question to start with, the minor modification versus a major modification. I think this is a major modification.
I realize
And
that.
when we met here last February, I believe it was,
Yep.
and you were here, and Richardson's company was here, and we had an agreement about the easement. So you were well aware back in February of what the easement agreement was, right?
Well, let me address,
Before you,
yeah, let me
before you
address.
put these parking
No,
spaces in.
may I address both of you?
Of course, please,
Okay,
I want you to answer me.
if you read my decision, it clearly states that changes in parking, I haven't got the verbiage, maybe Katrina does, but it says changes in parking and Bill, I forget the wording, but if you read the wording, it can be interpreted absolutely, it changes in parking and the site, as long as it does not violate any setbacks or green space area, will be considered a minor modification. That's how that is the decision that was made by this board. That's why I considered it. It's in there.
Word is shifted parking spots,
Right,
not
shifted.
changes.
Right, shifted.
And I didn't feel that this was a shifted parking spot, I felt you added parking spots.
But I'm
But
explaining that's why
but the
I thought it
language-
was
The language was shifted,
shifting. So I felt I was
not
shifting
all
it.
parking.
You know, I understand your interest in these extra parking spaces, and I've looked at your project, and it's a beautiful project, I agree with you. But one of your major problems, when you first became before the board, you were gonna use your land and back as a storage area for boats.
Which I
That's
still
what you
intend.
proposed to the board when they gave you permission to do this.
Yes.
Now I'm hearing that you don't wanna do that, and that you're thinking about possibly another building back there.
A building to put
And
boats
I look at the
possibly.
parking that's existing there now, and you have two shops that haven't opened yet, and the parking is difficult now, even without those two shops opening.
All right.
And yet, if you consider another building in the rear of that, parking is really gonna be a serious problem.
Well, I think when I come before the board with my future plans, I think they'll answer all those questions and I'm relieving the parking.
The parking complies with our bylaw.
We exceed the parking requirement.
Has he submitted a plan for the other building yet?
No.
No.
No, but
No,
right
but
now,
what's
Oh,
constructed.
I understand, that beats the thing, but it's still difficult.
well, first of all, I think whatever you're hearing are rumors. Because I haven't shown
said it was a
anybody.
rumor.
Yeah, I haven't shown anybody, and I will be right up
Until
front
you
with you.
file a
but-
plan, we would have no, you
Right,
know.
and my intent is, is storage, whether I put boats in the building or not, but I will come before the board, and I will also be, I think, addressing some of the concerns you have on parking. But parking's tight everywhere, but, all of the businesses that have moved into this, new facility are doing very well. And most of them, by design, most of the businesses are a lot of in and out. Middleton House of Pizza, Starbucks, they're all in and out, and then I am opening up a Pilates gym, that's in and out. So the movement is good, and believe it or not, I haven't gotten anybody complaining, because as fast as it fills up, 10 minutes later, there's 3 open ones. And that was done by design of who we put in, but that's another issue. So, but the address, I did not deliberately just go, oh, this, I've been doing this a long time, as you know, I've been in front of these boards more times than I'd like to think I have, but I honestly interpreted that as a shift. And I've apologized publicly for that, but it was not an intentional, oh, let me just do what I want to do. That wasn't it, okay? But then the second question you brought up was February, did I know of the easement? This is an interesting point, and this is where it may very well end up. This is more, in my mind, as a land court issue. What happened was, these people back here, as you know, had a grant, they had no access whatsoever to their property. So they had this paper easement. They went, the state, I don't believe the state was ever gonna give them another road to back there. They're good guys, I was developing, Paul did not, Richardson did not have the frontage or whatever for that. But anyway, the long and the short of it is, I brought water in, and we talked, and here was my intention, I blame myself, so I want you all to understand that. The intent of this, which these people would put in writing to you, this is what they thought the intent was too. This was the intent. I would bring water and service to everybody. I would in turn let the Richardsons and them use this easement, my easement, because without my easement, now the Richardsons would have to come through their road, I would shut them off, and they'd have to go down their road. So it benefited, so how we did it was, the intent was, you let us use this driveway, because I understand, I don't need this driveway, I got my entrances. But you let them use this driveway, I let you use this back, okay? And now everybody by doing that, now they got their waiver for frontage. These people now have a legal lot, so everybody's got a legal lot. It ended the whole problem. As naive as this sounds, I honestly was just trying to help the situation. And I know it sounds naive, but that's the truth. All right, so now we get into I knew. Here's the key. I read the whole thing. I did not, I'll be right up front, I didn't have a lawyer because I trusted everybody. We all knew the intent. Shame on me. I just handshake trusted it. I didn't have it.
I'm sorry, just to clarify, and I don't mean to interrupt, but, and there'll be a time for questions, I'm sure. So you didn't have a lawyer when the easement was drafted?
When this easement was drafted, I reviewed it myself.
Who drafted the easement?
I don't know if I should, Paul Richardson.
Attorney Jill Mann?
Paul Richardson's lawyer,
Who represented you at the last hearing?
but represented Paul Richardson on the easement.
Who also represents you before this board for this property?
Not for this easement at all.
For this, you can't separate one thing from the other with the property. She either represents 221 South Main Street or not.
You
She
can't,
either represents 221 South Main Street or not.
well, she didn't on the easement. I mean, there is a separation. She wasn't my attorney, and she won't, if she was standing here, I think she would tell you she's not my attorney on that. She was hired by the Richardsons on that. Remember, my project was done. Jill is my attorney, but on this particular issue.
She was adverse, she was working against your interests, is what you're saying?
I didn't say that, please, I did not say that. What I said was, I didn't hire another lawyer to read it, and the only thing I missed, here's what I missed in the easement, I'm just trying to answer the question. There is one line in the whole easement that says that the Richardsons have the right to move their easement. Now, understand, I'm not a stupid businessman, and I
No, you're
blame myself.
highly intelligent
Right,
and very
and I
sophisticated
blame
businessperson.
myself for this, but the line says that they can move this. Well, I didn't see that line, and trust
So
me.
even, I'm sorry, so even after this easement was drafted.
Right.
By Attorney Mann,
Right,
who only was representing the Richardsons
On this
in this
issue.
reciprocal easement agreement,
on this issue, yes.
that you're saying now is working against you and is actually adverse to your interests.
I don't want to get into legalities, I'm saying I did
I
not
am getting-
understand, I did not fully understand.
Right.
That-
How
how it
this easement was going to hurt you.
Right, there's no way Jill Mann did anything
But then you
against
hired
me.
this same attorney to represent you to come before the board after that fact. I'm just making sure that we're.
I have no, I have nothing against Jill. She didn't represent me on this. Shame on me. I didn't go to another attorney. Well, neither did, by the way, neither did the other about to hire another attorney. We all talked verbally. We all thought this was the intent. We were all solving the problem. Again, as I've explained to my son, well, I'll go to my grave with this stupidity. We all thought, when the people in the back found out that the Richardsons could move this over, they were as shocked as I was, because we all kind of agreed, here's the deal, we'll trade the front for the back, everybody wins. That was the deal. Now, I understand, and Jill did nothing against me, she represented them, is in there, shame on me for not hiring an attorney and seeing that one line. Again, I think haven't we all suffered from stupidity once or twice in our life? So that is done, but that's to answer your question. I did not deliberately do two things, just move the parking, I didn't do that, and I did not deliberately say, hey, Richardsons, I signed this agreement, and I know you can do this, to hell with you. I didn't do that either. I didn't do that.
But
And
what it looks
also-
like is that you made an agreement in February, and now you changed it when you built the parking lot.
No, and first of all, I'm not changing it because I have no permanent structure on there, and again, probably for the 600th time, not in front of this board, I have said that I will remove it when they get permits. That solves the problem in my mind and in lawyers' minds.
Opposition speak before we go back and forth. And then maybe take a recess before
I
we
have
allow
one-
the
Yeah.
I have one question.
Sure.
If
5 minutes.
it's done like you have planned it here,
Right.
then Runlet Way becomes a major thoroughfare,
In my mind,
because that feeds all the back of that, back here, that,
Well, that's when he came before us in February,
yeah.
last February.
well, it's a typical road, it's 30 feet wide. I mean, that's every road and all these roads. I don't know what's the issue there. We say major thoroughfare.
Well,
It's a road, it's a two-way road.
Yeah, but it increases all the traffic considerably because we've allowed other businesses way in the back, and we were always a little worried about the traffic flow.
Well, yeah, but what I did was, he's got my 20, it's gonna be, it's still a 30-foot road all the way. I mean, that's like, you know, my street, Perkins Road is 30 feet. I mean, that's a road. You think, I'm saying I don't believe the state's gonna turn around and say, put a 40, 50-foot road in there. I believe they're not gonna, and I don't know why you'd need it. There's nothing wrong with that road with traffic. There's nothing wrong with that at all. It's a legal road. I mean, it's 30 feet wide. I just wanted to be clear. I did
But
not
on
do
here,
it.
it says private way.
Yeah. Well, it's not because it's not adopted by the town.
Well, there's a big difference, private way in a adopted
But-
town.
It's actually
Regardless of
part of your
what I,
land.
regardless of the mistakes
road.
that the board may feel I made, my feeling is, and what my point is, and what I think the planning board voted was, regardless of that, it's in the interest of the community and the area to say that if in fact that easement is granted, I'll remove it and put it in the deed, and it ends the problem. There's still,
But you know, you keep saying all of these things about putting in the deed and I'll
One
agree
thing.
to this. None of that is in the packet that you've submitted to the board. This is just verbal things that you're
no, it would be a
presenting to the
condition,
board.
it would be a condition of your approval.
You know, if you want the board to consider these things, they should be in your packet
Well, that's
that you
what I-
submitted.
That's my
There's
presentation.
none of this, you're telling the board verbally here, you know, and it goes on the record, of course.
Right.
But the board wants to see all of these agreements that you are proposing in writing in the packet.
Again, correct me
You
if
know,
I'm wrong.
You say it today, tomorrow you could change your
No,
mind.
it-
If
it
it's
would-
in the packet and it's in writing, when the board looks at it,
No,
that's how the board accepts.
Legal counsel has
Positions.
told me I don't put it in writing, it's a condition of the board. If you vote to say, leave it alone, with the condition that it's in the deed, then I have to do that, that's when I do the deed and everything. But I'll be honest with you, the agreement's the agreement. If he gets rights, he has to tear it up. But that's my presentation to you, is that I'm saying, please approve me conditionally with that it has to be in a deed. And then the building inspector would not give me occupancy for the last unit until he saw the deed. That, to me, is normal, unless I'm missing something there. He's gonna come to me and say, I wanna see the deed, I show him the deed.
Can I, for a moment, to break this up, I think what we're talking about here is you want us to interpret this easement that I read, and it's really interesting reading. But, and I'm interpreting it not as an attorney, obviously, but it talks about keeping it accessible. It talks about there shouldn't be any parking on it. So I think what's happening is you guys are here for us to interpret your easement, and I don't think, I'm not qualified to do that. So,
I'm asking not to interpret, I'm not denying the easement, I'm asking that you approve the site plan with the understanding that I put in the deed that if the Richardsons get permission by the state and town to open it up, that we remove it.
but that's already in this easement that everyone
I-
already agreed to, that there
I know it
wouldn't
is,
be
but
any
they haven't got a
parking and that
permit.
there wouldn't be any
Right.
permanent structures and it would always be open for access. And you're right, your project is lovely, it's a success and it looks great. But I don't feel comfortable interpreting this easement for you.
It's open land, no one could travel on it, you got a stop sign in the way, you got 3 feet in the air. So again, until there's permits granted, he can never use the easement.
But I think you guys agreed to something that doesn't include parking spaces and curbs. But that's just my interpretation.
Well, I think, yeah, but I'm not asking you to,
Done.
yeah, I'm not asking you to do that, I think that will settle in land court. But I'm asking that you allow the parking, and under the condition that I present to the building inspector a deed that I'll remove it. So I'm not asking you to interpret it, that really is the land court to decide what happened on this thing. But I'm not asking the boards to do that. We're only there for the site plan approval. I'm saying that right now, he can't use that easement no matter what. If I took all that out, Richardson still can't travel over that easement, nor can the other. And I also asked you to consider that there's 2 abutters, and only one is complaining, and the one complaining hasn't even got there's nothing down there but dirt. The guy who's actually using it is satisfied.
I have two
Wait,
comments.
no, can we just take a 2-minute recess?
Yeah, but I have a comment One, I'd like to do a site walk again because,
Wait a minute, we're gonna take a recess. and
Okay.
Go back, okay? The board's gonna take a 5-minute recess.
Water before the
All right, ladies, we
even though
ready?
it's not an approved road?
The planning board endorsed the A&R plan. An A&R means approval not required. It doesn't require a public hearing.
Okay, we're back on the record. Any other board members have any questions of Mr. Kelly?
Not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to this application?
Good evening, I'm Peter Richardson, and we're a neighbor of Mr. Kelly's down on Runlet Way. I'm here with my brother Chris and my father Paul. I'd like to start off by saying tonight that we have given Mr. Kelly an airtight construction and easement on our property that is absolutely vital to both of their businesses. It gives Mr. Kelly another entrance on 114 an airtight, a legitimate entrance, which they've never had. Our entrance on 114 that we gave the easements on solved all the issues in the area. They currently both use the easement extensively with no interference. In return, we got an easement on Mr. Kelly's property that on his original approved site plan was intentionally left open. Without your approval, without any other town board approval, without any notice to any abutters, Mr. Kelly has changed the site plan and built a parking area within the easement. I do not feel an easement should be able to be blocked. While Mr. Kelly does own the property, he does not have control over it. He gave us a right on his property. Just the same as the easement area on our property, which we also pay taxes on. We own it, but we do not have control over it to interfere with the travel easement. Thank you for your time.
Please.
Hi, I'm Chris Richardson. Probably realize I'm on the abutters again. I know you got the reciprocal easement in the packet. I highlighted a few areas that I just wanted to point out tonight. I just wanted to pass out again so it's easier to find and read.
I told my wife to take it at 8, and then realized it takes 7.
Could we have one for the record? We'll just go into the file. Thanks.
I'd like to start off by saying that Mr. Kelly has built an attractive building, and we have no issue with the building at all. What we have an issue with is him trying to control our right. We're obviously disappointed and saddened to be here tonight, but when Mr. Kelly purchased the property, he never had control of that 20-foot easement. That 20-foot easement pre-existed him. Airtight has, or the owner prior to Airtight, always had access over that property. All improved on his initial site, on the initial site plan that the town, this board approved and the rest of the boards approved, he honored that easement. His attorney honored that easement and the engineer honored that easement. All improvements are intentionally situated outside of the easement area. Since his initial site plan after months of negotiation, we reached an agreement with Mr. Kelly for a reciprocal easement. This easement gave us the rights to ingress and egress to Route 114 and to travel on the 20-foot easement that was already in existence. In return, we gave Mr. Kelly a 30-foot easement that eventually goes down to a 10-foot easement with the same rights that we have on his easement. This board in February or March of last year saw this agreement, granted what's now the Airtight property in the rear of his, Mr. Kelly's property, granted them a special permit for their site, as well as us a special permit for our site. These now become part of the site. It would be conflicting site plans, I believe, if this one got approved. While Mr. Kelly holds legal title to that 20-foot easement, I can't state this enough. He does not have control of that 20-foot easement. He gave that right away. Given that the easement continues, in order to modify the plan as proposed, Mr. Kelly has to show control over the easement area. He cannot demonstrate control. The town cannot amend our agreement to say that Mr. Kelly can use the area even on a temporary basis. That was up to him to do when negotiating our agreement. This is no different than if someone tries to use an abutting parcel of land when securing permits. The town can only review the record, which contains an easement that burdens the way and clearly removes the element of control from Mr. Kelly. He has no unilateral right to change the agreement, and he has failed to secure the consent of all parties with rights in that land. Again, I know my brother mentioned it, but please keep in mind that without discussing this issue with the Board of Appeals, the building inspector, or any of the parties with rights to this easement, Mr. Kelly went against the town-approved site plan so he could add more parking to his property, thus blocking our easement. This would be the same as us putting parking on our easement and blocking his easement over our property currently. The easement on our property was never intended and should not be the only part of the easement that is used. Mr. Kelly's new site plan comes in after changes have been made and not approved. This new site plan should not be allowed because it infringes on other people's rights. Now, in your packet, if you could please refer to page 1 of the reciprocal easement. At the bottom of the page, the last whereas states, Richardson and River in this agreement is Mr. Kelly, both desire to create a common drive to provide access and ingress and egress to Route 114 for the benefit and enjoyment of each of the properties. Now, if you can please refer to page 2. At the top of the page, the first whereas states, the parties have identified the common drive on a sketch plan attached hereto as Exhibit A. If you turn to the blue tab on your packet, Exhibit A will be on the blue tab. Exhibit A clearly shows the easements. The yellow highlighted easement is the 20-foot easement that Mr. Kelly has put his parking on. The pink highlighted easement is what we, the Richardsons, contributed to the common drive. Also, I know Mr. Kelly brought it up, and it is in our agreement. Please keep in mind that stated on page 4, section 2C, which is the orange tab. I'll let everyone get there for a second. Richardson and its successors and assigns shall have the right to relocate easement A within the Richardson lot, provided the relocated area shall continue to provide safe and adequate access to Route 114 and shall continue to connect to the portion of the common drive located within easement B. The intention of this easement was always to combine the easements and create a much improved runlet way, which will be accessed by a potential of a minimum of 5 large buildings. This site is not fully developed. There will be more buildings on this site. That's the reason you need the space on this easement. On the same page, just below section 3A, the first sentence states, the parties shall not be entitled to use the common drive in a manner that will or is likely to hinder or prohibit or unreasonably interfere with or interrupt the use of the common drive by the other party entitled thereto. And finally, the last one is the green tab, section 10, titled No Cross Parking Limited Rights. The first sentence states, nothing herein is intended to grant parking rights on the common drive or on any other portion of any party's property. Just in closing, I just want to keep saying it. He does not have control of this 20-foot easement. He gave that right away the right he never had, but he gave us the right to be on this easement as well a year ago. Without control, he can't use it for parking. Thank you.
Any board members have any questions? A motion?
Mr. Chairman, if nobody else has any questions, I have one or two. Dozen.
Please.
Let's see if I can put these all. Let's see if I can organize these a little better for you. I think the first thing that stands out to me is that we're dealing with real estate. We're not dealing with people here. This isn't Warren Kelly versus Paul Richardson and Sons. This is, we're being asked to look at the impact that 221 South Main Street has on its abutters and what has happened on the property since it was originally granted a special permit. So there's a lot of emotion tied into when you make personal references, and I can appreciate that, but I think if we look at it through the prism of, what this is we're looking at the property, not the people. And so I appreciate Mr. Kelly's representations that, he intends to do, and he intends to do this, and intends to do that. And I have no doubt that being, as I've said in the past, many times, being a very intelligent business person, a very sophisticated business person, that what he intends to do, he really, truly does intend to do. The problem with that is the law doesn't care what you intend to do when it comes to real estate. When it comes to real estate, it's only what's on paper that matters. So I can't reiterate enough. I don't doubt that what is intended, he truly means. But we have to look at what is actually on paper and what is now on the ground at the site, and how that not only affects the town in terms of how we address site plans in general, and everything that goes into it, and also how it affects the abutters. And in this case, the abutters are present here with the Richardson Group. So I'm trying not to get caught up in the weeds of the personal stuff and just look at it, specifically to what is being asked of us here is to approve a modified site plan. Removing the fact that it was modified and put in, and the site was modified and changed without any approval from the town, irregardless of why or how or whatever mechanism was in place, looking at this as if it was a brand-new modification to the site plan and ignoring all of the personal stuff and putting that aside, how personally do I look at this site plan, this modified site plan, as it relates to the site itself and its impact on the abutters and the criteria that we have to look at for any site plan? And I have a problem approving a site plan that explicitly encroaches on an easement. Period. Not because I don't trust the landowner to make the changes 5, 6, 10, 20 years down the line like he has promised that he intends to do, but that things change. And that's why real estate is so tricky and so specific in the requirements for, for filing with the registry of deeds and and having things on file so that the world knows exactly what's supposed to go on with each property. And there's just so many questions that come up with a case like this where we have to rely on the parties themselves to do the right thing. Because as unfortunate as it may sound, tomorrow you might not be the party. And they might not be the party. I mean, it's just, that's life. Parties change. You can represent and you could stand by your multiple properties and say, I would never do this, or I would always do this, and I always do the right thing. And that may be true, But if you're not here tomorrow, you could sell this property tomorrow to somebody else who isn't as reliable. And what are we left with at that point?
In the deed.
But it's not in the deed. See, so now it's not in the deed, because you've already represented several times that you would change the deed based on what our decision is tonight. So it's not in the deed right now.
Would be a condition.
This is why words matter, and being specific really matters when it comes to real estate. So some of the questions that arise for me with something like this, and it's not specific to this property, it's specific to any property, because once we allow this site plan to be approved with all of this ambiguity, these same questions would arise. You've represented that these parking spaces are temporary. Well, what classifies them as temporary? You know, what's the actual cost to remove them? What's the time frame to remove those parking spaces? What's the legal mechanism that triggers you being required to remove those parking spaces? Who determines when that mechanism has been triggered? How long after that event has been triggered, do you have to make the changes to the site? Can you wait another 5 years, say, property owner B, hey, I'm gonna get to it, don't worry. Hey, I'm gonna get to it, don't worry.
He has to do it, it's in the thing. He has to read we're interpreting this thing, but in the easement, at their expense, they have to do it, so he can do it immediately.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's in the easement.
See, and that's why words matter, again.
Yeah.
So you've been making representations that you would put it back.
Then I would take he was worried about the hot top, I'll take the hot top off, but he doesn't.
Just a minute. Mr. Kelly, if you're going to respond, I've asked you stand up and speak to the microphone so we have you on the record, please. You're welcome to answer the questions, but would you please stand up and speak into the microphone?
But again, not even related necessarily to this property, but to this issue. Who determines when the mechanism's been triggered? How long after that event is triggered before the removal must begin? And the other thing is, well, what does it have to go back to? If the only thing before us right now is for a site plan modification to allow for the site plan to change to this site plan that you've proposed. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, after this event is triggered and the site has to go back to the way it's supposed, there's nothing that says what it has to go back to.
Well, I have a drawing what it could go back to.
It's not in the file. Again, it's not here in your application. So, and all of these questions can't be answered.
I can address real quickly. I'll just make one last statement and call it a day. I will address. First of all, I'm not asking you to interpret the easement. That will be done by lawyers. And my lawyer, okay, here's the difference. My lawyer, well, you're calling it a blockage on the easement. This easement parking, it's in there, but that's only if the easement can be used. They've got a long way to go before it can be used. That's where the lawyers come in, and here's what I'm asking for, the same vote that the planning board voted, that let me leave it there, and then once, if he does get permission, if the Richardsons get it, then it comes out and it's I will present the deed and everything else. That's all I'm asking for, exactly what they did. The interpretation of this, if we don't, yeah, we're gonna spend years and this whole mess just got cleared up. Now, for me and the Richardsons to spend the next 4 years in land court over this, to me, is ridiculous. I'm just saying, if they possibly can get the entrance that they want, then just put it in the condition that it has to come up. But that's all I'm asking for.
But I guess
with the planning board.
my follow-up to that is, it seems like you want us to allow this to go through, and then you're gonna end up in land court fighting over the easement.
No.
But you keep representing that just approve it, and we'll end up in land court for the next 4 years.
If I have to tear it out and leave my beautiful place gravel, yes, I'm prepared, I'm ready to file for land court. All I'm asking him for is let me leave it.
That's
and then-
entirely,
I
but
know.
who are you going to land court against?
Well, that's between, obviously, I'm gonna try to stop the Richardsons from controlling my land.
They're not controlling your land,
Yeah,
Mr. Kelly.
I think they made it pretty clear just as a statement, but that's all.
Wait, excuse me. excuse me, Mr. Kelly, you would have to sue the town.
Town, I don't want to sue the town.
Because we represent the town, and the town, you're asking the town to change the site plan. And if we vote no,
Right.
you have to go back to the way the town already approved
I
your site
understand
plan. So that has nothing to do with your abutters, that has to do with the town,
Well, it does.
Yeah.
Well, no, if I win in land court, guess what?
against who?
Against the Richardsons. If I win in court, land court against the Richardsons, then I get the rights, and I have to come back before the town with the rights. I'm just asking, right now, let me do it temporarily, because I don't believe they'll ever get that entrance. But if they do get it, and let me ask
But
you
you-
this, what if they don't get it?
But you haven't asked for a temporary site plan.
I have.
No, you haven't. You asked for a modified site plan for 221 South Main Street
says I
with a
will
minor
remove it.
change in parking. I'm just, Mr. Kelly, it's in writing, like,
It's in the plan in writing. The plan that I'm asking to be approved. It's in writing that those will be removed. It's in writing on the plan that they will be removed. I'm trying to avoid land court too. I'm saying, I don't know what point it serves to have a bunch of dirt sitting in next to my plaza for the next 4 years, 5, and let's just say he doesn't get the rights, just say I'm right. So now, he's not gonna fix it, so now we're gonna, why are we doing this? All I'm saying is, it's in writing that they'll be removed.
but it's in writing that you'll have a site plan that was, the site will be developed as approved last year. That was in writing. Was it not?
I'm in here for modification, right? I think I've already explained myself why I did that. I've already apologized for
You
that.
did
I
that
thought it was
outside
mine.
of the plan.
I think I've explained, and I thought that was mine.
We understand that.
Okay. So all I'm asking for is what I feel the planning board made the right decision. Leave it alone, put it in the deed, then if he ever does, it comes right out.
Yeah.
I don't think it is your jurisdiction, and I'm not asking you to interpret that easement. I know I've got attorneys that are interpreting that easement.
That don't, but didn't write the easement.
No, they didn't write it, and obviously,
Wait, the same,
I can't use the same attorney, obviously.
okay, just check. I'm
Obviously.
just, you have all these attorneys that are interpreting this easement, but.
This easement everything can be interpreted, as you well know, several ways. I'm fighting my battle, but that's not the public battle for this town to get involved in, that's all I'm asking for.
No, the public battle for this town is you had a site plan that was approved.
Right.
Now you're asking for us to approve a different site plan.
That's exactly what I'm asking, which both other boards,
And you're threatening litigation.
not against the town. No, I'm saying I want to avoid, what do you mean threatening? First of all, I don't threaten litigation, I have never threatened this town with litigation. So, listen, I don't know where that's coming from.
Because we're the party in this case.
You're not the party. I will tell you right now, you're not the party. The party is what rights do the Richardsons have on my land, that's the party. Has nothing to do with this town.
No, the party is, the town is saying whether or not you can have a site plan that you're asking to be modified as such.
Yeah, well, that's your decision, and I have to live by your decision. I
The
understand
Richardson's
that.
got nothing to do with the site plan.
Absolutely. I'm talking about if I
So you're
can't,
asking us to modify the
Right.
site plan, so the
And if
board
we-
has liability
And
here.
if we say no, you have to put it back to the way it originally was
I
approved,
fully understand that.
okay?
No, I understand that. And any litigation would be against the Richardsons, not you, for me to recoup my rights to my land. I'm just trying, that's gonna do with the town. I'm trying to avoid that. I'm trying to develop this in harmony with the Richardsons, not with lawyers. That's all I'm trying to do. So what am I asking? Can we boil it down to what I'm asking again? I'm asking for you to approve those parking spaces and then if the Richardsons get approval to widen that road, okay, then they come out, which is in writing, and I'm willing to put in a deed. That's all I'm asking. That ends this entire battle. So the litigation thing came up with, I'm forced, if the town, I have to live by what you say, but then again, I believe there's flaws in it, and I want to get my land back so I can do it. It's a lot of money for me, it's gonna be a lot of money, why do it? I'll approve it, and I'm just saying, if they can get that approval, then I live with it, but I don't think I just don't believe the state's gonna allow a 40, 50-foot road access. I just don't believe it. But if it happens, then I have to live with it.
That's something in the future, that's not before us now.
Right, but why make that land sit there as a gravel piece of dirt for the next 5, 6 years? Why? For what purpose? Just so the Richardsons can say they control it? What purpose does it? That's where I'm coming from. Let's talk logical. It's a piece of land that is sitting there that nobody can travel on now, and that's where the interpretation gets a little bit different.
in all due respect. One lawyer will say, no, if you put parking on a usable easement, absolutely, you got a problem. You got a piece of dirt that, I don't even know what it's gonna cost them to do drainage and all that, just not a travelable, lot of permits gotta be done, a lot has to be done. That's totally different than putting parking on a travelway easement. And this is where, you know, I'm not a lawyer, but this is where lawyers fight the battle. That's all I'm saying.
I
You
think the
can't-
board understands where you're coming from.
Hey, if you make me tear this up, then all you're gonna do from now on is drive down 114 and see a pile of dirt that, let's just say he never gets the 60-foot road. Let's just say the town comes out in an outcry, we don't want 60-foot road there. We're gonna look at the dirt for the next 20 years? That's ridiculous. I have an interest, I live in this community, that looks very beautiful, it's not hurting the Richardsons, this is,
So, I guess,
it's not hurting the Richardsons.
so, let's just, because just to look at the issue here,
Right.
the issue of, there is a legal easement
Right, agreed.
that has been developed on.
There's no permanent structures on it.
What is temporary,
That's key.
so what makes it permanent?
A permanent structure is a structure. Again, there's no hot top, whether you told me to gravel it, grass it, or pave it, none of that's permanent, that's surface, and that surface comes right up.
How high does it have to be before it doesn't count as something that's permanent? I mean, how high
Well,
does the
there's
granite
definition.
curbing have to be? I mean, if you're
I
restricting
said
access.
If you want, I'll take the granite curbing out. The granite curbing could be interpreted, I think it's a far cry, but I'm willing to give a lot here. I'll take the granite curbing out. I think that's.
But
I'll
you know
take it
what doesn't require a lot of interpretation?
out. What's that?
The original site plan.
Then that's,
There's no ambiguity there. There's no doubt if somebody came in tomorrow and said, hey, what can I do on these two properties? And they would look at the site plan and say, boom, here's what I can do. They don't have to go down and talk to, somebody at town hall and say, hey, what is he gonna allow me to do next door? Is he gonna do this? Is he gonna do that? No, it's, you look at the paper, what does it say? Who's got the right to do what? As of right now, what's recorded in the registry of deeds and what's recorded with the town, there isn't a whole lot of ambiguity there.
But you have the rights to condition it. Listen, and all due
But see, do you understand the Pandora's box you're opening, that now every time somebody, so let's do another abstract. So you have two properties side by side. One grants, not rich, no, they don't own it. You don't own it. Joe Schmo and they own it. They bargain for, and both agree, both are sophisticated landowners and business people. They both bargain for and sign and record an easement to allow one property owner to access the other's property and vice versa. But the one property owner says, you know what, I'm gonna build out a little bit and develop my part of the easement. But you know what, I'm gonna put some really nice flowers on it. Should we allow them to do that?
No, I think this might
So
be-
because it looks nice, we can allow one property owner to encroach on another property owner's
guess
rights
there's a
that have
lo-
been bargained for? I don't see this as causing fewer problems, I see it causing more problems down the line.
Well,
And I can understand how that,
I think there's a lot you don't know, that's why, and I don't want to get into it, but I think there's a lot you don't know. If you know anything about Warren Kelly, I am a pretty honest,
But
very
it has
honest-
nothing to do with you, it has to do
is.
with the property and how the property looks to the world. It has nothing to do with Warren Kelly, it has to do with 7 River Street LLC as the property owner of 221 South Main
You
Street.
don't find it a little unreasonable that the Richardsons have a 30-foot.
The Richardsons have
and
nothing to do
the
with
other
this.
abutter has no
The,
problem, and they want to control my little piece of land.
Because the other property owner has full access to their property through their land.
So don't they?
But of course, they're not gonna
hardship.
complain. Their 100% of their access is over land that you don't control.
What are you gonna do? if
Wait,
they
is
can't get-
that correct or is that incorrect?
I don't control their land.
Correct.
Nor do I
So
wanna
the
control it.
property owner you keep referring to, that's all in favor of you just keeping things the way it is, encroaching on this this
Why does
easement,
he want to control my land? That's what I don't understand. Why? Just to say he control land?
has nothing to do with that.
It does. Well, I think it does, it certainly. But
But didn't you agree to this last February?
I think I explained myself on that, and that's what will be taken up in land court. I think that's what I tried to explain to you. I thought I was doing an agreement, and I screwed up. I told you that, but that's neither here nor there. All I'm asking the town to do is do what the planning board voted for, approve it, and then I take it up. I'll give you another plan that we would go to.
The planning
But you gotta
board
do what
doesn't
you gotta
approve
do.
anything. They make
I
recommendations to the
understand.
zoning board.
But they make recommendations, but they also are, as we all are, they're town residents.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not asking for anything, and I'm not gonna continue to stand here and
Well, you
tell
are
you how I
asking for
made a
something.
stupid thing. I think I've told you, I made a mistake 20 times. Outside of, what else can I say? I told you I live with that mistake. But there's a lot more to it, and I'm not, as you all know, there's a lot more to this situation than I'm standing here saying. So I'm trying to solve it. It does nobody good for the Richardsons and for our family to fight for the next 5 years. It serves no purpose, and it's not gonna help Rutland Way. So, I thought the problem was solved, but if you tell me I have to rip it out, I rip it out, and I'll have to come with another site plan, obviously, for another approval. But I don't know why you would make me, I think that's ridiculous, and the town, everybody will live with the fact, if they just look at that, and let's just say I am right and the state doesn't allow a 60-foot road. This is ludicrous. What, just so the Richardsons can control this piece? Why not, why can't they be reasonable since we all work together and say, if we do?
So, wait, I'm sorry, so
then
if the
we move
state,
it.
let's say the state never.
Approves it.
So now, what you're asking the zoning board here in town to do.
Right.
Is, we'll issue special permits and site plan approval, okay? And all of them are conditioned upon the state.
Well, the state and the town's got to approve an entrance.
But
You have to
there's
prove
no, that has nothing to do with this site.
Well, the only reason.
The site plan that's been approved has nothing to do with any future, it's similar to asking, requiring an occupant, waiting that last occupancy permit. It's kind of the same thing, like Mass Highway approval has nothing to do with the site plan that was originally
Well,
approved.
it does, because if he never gets an entrance,
It has
he
but
can
that
never
has
use that
nothing to
easement.
do with-
before the
That's a
board.
different property. Your property
Right.
has nothing to do with Mass Highway.
He can't use it if he can't get an entrance from Mass Highway.
But that's not before the board. That's not a question we're addressing now.
I understand.
You know, you got permission for a site plan,
Right.
and you took and made a change to the site plan on your own without permission.
And I'm asking for a site, I know, and I've.
And I understand you staying up and you say, oh, I'm sorry, and so, but when the board approved a site plan, that's what it is. And you don't have the right to make a change to it without permission.
And I'm asking for a modification, which has been.
But you already made the change.
I'm asking for a modification, just as hundreds of other people have in the world of development.
Yeah.
And so, what, is he going to be punished? I don't know what else I can say, but, all right?
The board isn't gonna punish you. The board is just gonna go by its interpretation of the
Do it.
plan and what you asked for and what was approved. And tell you that you have to go by what is approved in the site plan. And you've extended that based on your interpretation that this was a minor
Site
modification.
plans, do you agree, site plans are modified several times? I think the issue here is whether or not the
Right.
Richardsons.
It can be
The
modified
issue-
if you
it
can
wasn't-
get it approved.
Let's be honest, if the Richardsons were not going after me and my family this way, this would be a no-brainer. You guys would all accept that plan, just as the planning board did, just as Paul's own board did. That's the caveat here. And if we're honest, yes, you would reprimand me for doing what I did, but if I didn't have the Richardsons coming after me on this plan works, and I know you would approve it. There's nothing wrong with it. So let's all be upfront about that.
If
The
we're being,
reason-
excuse me, Mr. Kelly, before you insult everybody here, instead of just the Richardsons, because you're going on a roll and you should probably sit down.
I'll sit down and call it like.
Thank you. If this were coming before us, and that is the issue, is that if a similar situation comes before the board, this property is unique in that it has an easement that was recently bargained for and given by you, so that, we have to look at it at all the elements that are here. And if you look at it, as I said at the beginning of this hearing, If this had just come before us, and this was the original site plan you wanted approved, okay? Regardless of who the abutter is, regardless of who you are, frankly, are we going to allow a site plan that puts parking over an easement without hearing from the easement holder? Because they have the right, they can waive their rights to that easement, go for it, if they want to do that. I wouldn't advise it, but they could do that. In this case, they're not. Irregardless of who they are or who you are, property A has, property A has the site plan that's already been approved. And property A has an easement that's been granted to property B. Property B says, hey, we approve the original site plan, we're all in favor of it, the town approves it, it goes through, everybody's happy. You went and changed it, encroaching on an easement. And it doesn't matter who holds the easement personally. It's property A and property B. It's not Warren Kelly versus Paul Richardson. And you have to look at it that way, and it's very hard to look at it that way. Especially, where there's a lot of time and money and emotion put into things. But to just ignore the fact that there are legal issues here that the town has to address, and to accuse the town of some personal vendetta and make all these representations before the board on the record that really besmirch the integrity of the board as if they're acting, for a personal interest for, somebody or what have you. It's a little out of line for somebody that's trying to be all magnanimous.
Mr.
And
Chairman,
it's really unappreciated.
if there's no new information, it sounds like the board is probably ready to make a motion, right?
I'll make a motion. Make a motion to deny the application 18-1068 for a modified site plan for 221 South Main Street, requesting a minor change in parking locations.
Motion made, is there a second?
Well, second.
Motion made and seconded, all those in favor, vote.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye. Thank you very much. Does the board have any other business? If there's no other business, the chair will accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Meeting is adjourned.